She once told her friends, in a voice that cut sharper than she knew, "If he ever met my family, I'd just die of embarrassment." Honestly, I'd never let that happen. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. From the next room, every word landed like glass shattering inside my chest. I didn't argue, didn't storm in. I just sat there, silent. That weekend, she would finally understand what true embarrassment felt like. Not in the way she imagined, but in the way life sometimes twists when the mask slips. You never think it's going to be you. You read these stories online, betrayals, lies, the quiet cruelty people hide behind their smiles, and you think, that can't happen to me. I'd see it coming. I'd know the signs. But here's the truth. You can be staring right at the rot, living inside it, and have no idea until the floor suddenly disappears beneath you. For me, that collapse came on an ordinary Wednesday night. My name's Daniel. I'm 40 years old, and for almost 2 decades I've run my own woodworking and design company. I started small, just a dusty garage, a few borrowed tools, and more determination than sense. Now I've got a team, contracts with high-end clients, and a workshop full of sawdust, blueprints, and the smell of cut cedar. My hands are rough, calloused, and often nicked with scars, but they tell the story of something real. Something I built with no shortcuts. And for the last 5 years, my life revolved around Claire. She's 33, stunning, clever, and works in corporate communications. The kind of woman who knows exactly how to charm a room, how to make strangers lean in, how to wield words like weapons and ribbons all at once. We met at a charity event. I was there because one of my clients insisted. She was there because that was her world. When she smiled at me that night, I thought I'd stumbled into a fairy tale. She was polished where I was plain, sophisticated where I was straightforward. She ordered wine I couldn't pronounce and corrected me, laughing sweetly when I used the wrong fork at dinner. I thought she completed me. I thought she was the balance my rough edges needed. 6 months ago, we got engaged. Claire insisted we both wear engagement rings, her idea of modern equality, a symbol of mutual commitment. It wasn't something I'd ever considered, but she was passionate about it. She wanted the world to see us as equals. So I wore a brushed silver band she picked out with her friends, while she wore the diamond I chose for her. A timeless, elegant piece that cost me more than the first truck I ever owned. I didn't care. I wanted her to have something extraordinary. But underneath all of it, there was always the same quiet tension. Where we came from. My parents were school teachers. We lived in a modest house, made the most of what we had, and I grew up believing hard work was the only real currency that mattered. Claire's family? Old money. Her father was a senior partner at a law firm, her mother ran a foundation, and their weekends were filled with charity galas, art auctions, and summers on the coast. I'd met her parents only a handful of times. They were polite, but always with that distant curiosity, as if I were an unusual guest specimen at their dinner table, something to be tolerated, never fully welcomed. I wasn't invited to family Christmases or Easter brunches. Claire always had excuses. It's a small thing, you'd be bored, or, my aunt can be really judgmental, I don't want to put you through that. I believed her. I thought she was protecting me. But the truth was something else entirely. That night, when I overheard her with her 2 closest friends, her bridesmaids, it all became crystal clear. I was in my study, finishing some design sketches, when their laughter started bleeding through the walls. Wine had loosened their tongues, and then one of them asked Claire, "So, is the big anniversary party this weekend where Daniel finally meets the family?" The pause was deafening, and then Claire laughed, a sound I'd never heard from her before. It wasn't joy, it was sharp, cold, dismissive. God, no. I'd never let him meet them. He's too embarrassing. The words didn't just hurt. They broke something inside me. Her friends joined in, mocking me in ways that felt so precise, so cruel. What would I talk about with her father? Wood stains? Furniture polish? They laughed harder. And Claire, my fiancée, my supposed partner, joined in fully. "Don't worry," she told them. "The plan is to marry him, keep him stable, and then fix him. He's a good provider, he just needs refining." Or, she added with a smirk in her voice, "I'd trade up." I don't remember what they said after that. My ears rang with a hollow roar. I wasn't her partner. I was a project, a placeholder, a man she wanted to manage rather than love. I didn't confront her. I didn't burst into the room. I just sat there in the dark, hands resting on my notebook, and felt something hard and clear form beneath the hurt. She had just drawn me a map of exactly how she saw me and exactly what she planned to do. And if she thought I was simple, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. That was the night I started planning. I remember pacing my room, trying to convince myself it was just a passing thought. Maybe she needed clarity, maybe she was confused, maybe she just didn't understand the weight of her words. But the more I replayed the message, the less it sounded like confusion, and the more it sounded like a decision already made. When I confronted her about it, she didn't flinch. She looked me straight in the eyes, calm, collected, almost rehearsed, and said, "Before I give my whole life to you, I need to know I've truly closed every chapter of my past. If I don't, I'll always wonder." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't insecurity. It was conviction. I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand why my love wasn't enough, why the future we were planning couldn't outweigh the memories of a failed past. But words caught in my throat. Her calmness made my anger feel small, like a child's tantrum against a storm. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, imagining her with him, not physically yet, but in spirit. Her heart wasn't here beside me. It was wandering in another world, in another life she couldn't let go of. I realized then that closure wasn't about him. It was about her. She needed to face who she once was before she could step into who she wanted to become. The next morning, she packed a small bag. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't promise she'd be back. She just said, "Trust me. If this is real, if what we have is true, I'll come back whole." And then she left. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Days blurred into weeks. I'd check my phone 100 times a day, hoping for a message, a sign, anything. At night, I'd scroll through old photos of us, trying to read her smile like it was some secret code telling me she was still mine. Friends told me I was a fool for waiting. They said closure was just an excuse, a softer word for betrayal. But I couldn't let go. I loved her too deeply, too fiercely to believe she'd throw everything away for a ghost of her past. One evening, after nearly a month of silence, she finally called. My heart raced when I saw her name on the screen. Her voice was steady, but there was something different, something raw. "I found my answer," she said. "I thought I needed to see if there was anything left between us." But standing in front of him, I realized it wasn't love I was holding on to. It was guilt, regret, a version of myself that no longer exists. He's my past, not my future. You're the only one who's ever made me feel like I'm exactly where I belong. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or betrayed. The words soothed me and cut me at the same time. She had gone searching for what I had been giving her all along. When she returned, there was a quietness about her. Not the cold silence of distance, but the calm silence of someone who had walked through a storm and found her way out. She placed her bag down gently, almost ceremonially, as though the act itself marked the end of something. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the air between us held every unanswered question. I wanted to scream, to demand why she had to put me through weeks of doubt and sleepless nights. I wanted to ask if she had touched him, kissed him, let him hold her the way I had. The questions burned inside me like fire against my chest, but I swallowed them. Instead, I just said, "Did you find what you were looking for?" She nodded slowly, her expression soft but resolute. "I found myself. And I found that I don't need closure from him. I needed closure from the version of me who thought she did." Those words struck deeper than any confession could have. For the first time, I realized this journey wasn't just about our relationship. It was about her becoming someone capable of giving herself fully. But still, the wound she had left in me wasn't so easily healed. Trust, once cracked, never shines the same. I tried to listen, tried to believe her, but I couldn't shake the memory of her absence. Nights alone had carved doubts into my heart like etchings in stone. We tried to resume our life together. Wedding plans resumed, families smiled again, and friends congratulated us as if nothing had happened. But beneath the surface, every laugh, every kiss, every plan was haunted by the unspoken. I found myself watching her when she thought I wasn't looking, searching for hesitation in her eyes, for shadows of someone else in her smile. And sometimes when she caught me staring, she'd squeeze my hand a little tighter, as if silently pleading, "Trust me. I chose you." But the truth was, love is not just about choosing. It's about never needing to question the choice. And now, doubt was my constant companion. One night, I finally asked her the question that had gnawed at me since the day she left. My voice was low, almost trembling. Was there anything between you and him when you went back? She looked at me, her gaze unwavering, her voice clear. No, not in the way you fear. I didn't go back for him. I went back for me. To prove to myself that the woman I am today doesn't need to cling to yesterday. Her answer should have freed me. It should have soothed the wound. But instead, it left me caught between gratitude and suspicion. I wanted to believe her with every fiber of my being, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. Time moved forward, but trust did not. The days filled with smiles and routines, yet every quiet moment between us felt like a test. She would laugh at something on her phone, and my heart would tighten. She'd go out with friends, and I'd wonder if closure was just another word she'd learned to weaponize. I hated myself for thinking that way, but suspicion had become a parasite feeding on my love. One evening, as we sat together planning our future, she caught my gaze drifting. She closed the notebook and whispered, "You don't believe me, do you?" I froze. Words tangled in my throat. I wanted to say yes, of course I believe you, but honesty pressed down like a weight. Finally, I managed, "I want to. God, I want to. But a part of me is still stuck in those weeks you were gone." She didn't flinch. Instead, she moved closer, taking my hand in both of hers. "Then let's face that part together. I don't want to build a marriage on cracks we pretend aren't there. Ask me anything. Shout at me. Hate me for what I did if you need to. But don't bury it. Don't let silence poison what we have." Her words were both an invitation and a challenge. For the first time, I saw not the girl who had left, but the woman who had returned, someone willing to confront pain rather than hide from it. So I spoke. I poured out every fear, every sleepless night, every thought of betrayal that had haunted me. My voice broke, my hands trembled, but I didn't hold back. She listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, there was no defensiveness in her, no anger, just a deep, quiet sorrow. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not because I left, but because I didn't realize what leaving would do to you. I thought I was fixing myself for us, but I was blind to the damage I was causing in the process." Her honesty cut sharper than denial ever could. For the first time, I realized she hadn't chosen selfishness out of malice. She had chosen it out of desperation. She wasn't running to him. She was running from the parts of herself she hadn't yet conquered. And yet, even with this understanding, forgiveness didn't come instantly. It never does. Love isn't magic. It's work, sometimes brutal work. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild, not by pretending the past hadn't happened, but by making it part of our story. We talked more. We argued more. But strangely, in that friction we found something new. Resilience. There were moments when I thought about walking away, times when the weight of doubt felt heavier than the promise of love. Yet every time I stood on that edge, something inside me pulled me back. The memory of who we were before all of this. The fire in her eyes when she swore she wanted a future with me. The quiet strength in her touch when she held my hand as if it were the anchor keeping her steady. I realized love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing someone who's worth enduring it for. She began showing me her healing in small ways. She started journaling at night, not hiding it, but leaving it open on the table as if to say, "This is me." No secrets. She spoke more about her past, about the scars I'd never seen. And in return, I began opening pieces of myself I had always kept locked away. It was strange. Her leaving had nearly broken us, but in its aftermath, we were building a closeness we had never known before. We were learning to love each other not as the perfect images we once clung to, but as the flawed, complicated, wounded humans we truly were. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, she leaned her head against my shoulder and whispered, "Do you still want to marry me?" The question hit me like a wave. For weeks I had asked myself the same thing in silence, and in that moment, with her vulnerability pressing against my chest, the answer rose from a place deeper than fear. "Yes," I said, "but not because I've forgotten what happened. Because I've accepted it, because I see who you are now, and I still choose you." She exhaled, a shaky breath that sounded like release. "Then I promise," she whispered, "never again will I let the past dictate our future. If I ever waver, if I ever feel lost, I'll turn to you, not away from you." For the first time in months, I believed her. Not blindly, not naively, but with a trust forged through fire. The path ahead wasn't smooth. There were still nights when shadows of doubt crept in, still days when silence felt heavier than words. But we walked through them together, not pretending everything was perfect, but reminding ourselves that perfection was never the goal. Commitment was. Love, I realized, isn't about certainty. It's about faith, and faith is choosing to leap even when you can't see the ground beneath you. So when the day finally came, when she walked toward me in her white dress with tears shimmering in her eyes, I didn't see the woman who had left me once. I saw the woman who had returned, stronger, clearer, truer, and as I took her hand, I knew. Closure hadn't come from the past. It had come from the choice we made in that moment. To build, to forgive, to fight for something greater than our doubts. That was the real beginning of our marriage. Not the vows we spoke, not the rings we exchanged, but the silent promise we had already lived through. No matter the storm, we come back to each other.